And of course, this is where the whole diet, exercise, lifestyle thing comes in. So, okay.
And we need to sweat. So what are some targeted belly fat reduction tips that you can share? And
Okay.
I know it's
Number,
complex,
well,
so say that it's not like a magic bullet, of course, but I feel
well,
like
I first starting with diet, which to me is still the foundation, because diet is really where we lose fat. Exercise, which we'll talk about in a second, to me is non-negotiable, but for different reasons. But the diet is critical. So I really want people to to have their diet around protein, high quality protein. I mean, okay, never mind that it does boost your metabolism because it is so metabolically challenging for your body to digest it. But also, do you know what everyone says when they come in my door after they adhere to some of my recommendations, especially with protein? They're not hungry. They are not hungry. And let's face it, if you are hungry, this is not going to go down well, people. And this is fantastic because the message is this. We have receptors in our body that know when you have gotten enough protein, or more importantly, the amino acids. The amino acids is when protein breaks down, and that's really what we're eating protein for, anyways, is to get those essential amino acids. And there's actually receptors in your gut that tell you that you have had enough protein and you are good to go, and ones that tell you you haven't had enough. To the point where I like to bring up how much we have learned in raising animals. This is very interesting. When they want cows to gain weight, they decrease the amount of protein in their feed because the cow will naturally eat more until it gets all of those amino acids. So really thinking about that, and I see it in action every day here. And the other thing about protein, which this again, I feel so much has changed in our understanding since I was a trainer in like the mid 1990s. We actually need more protein when we are sedentary. That's right. Who would have thought that?
yes,
But it,
and
but
we burn
now
more
it
calories at
makes sense,
rest with
right?
protein.
But it makes sense because see, when you are sedentary, we are not giving the signal from the muscle that's like thirsty, like, oh, give me those amino acids. So in order to stimulate, which is what we want, muscle, then we need a little bit more protein. Okay, so I think that's good on protein, but I would say, of course, the next belly fat thing in supporting the microbiome and all of the detoxification pathways would be eating a cornucopia of vegetables. And I think, to me, from Nutrition 101, I think this bears repeating, is vary your intake, because people can have issues with certain vegetables. There are toxins which I think are okay to eat, like natural toxins like oxalates, for example. But I think
Like
it is an important thing to think about eating a variety. I always say dark leafy greens, the cruciferous vegetables like the cabbage family, broccoli, cauliflower, which has an important role, by the way, in actually helping clear out some of those environmental estrogens. So
and
that's
are used up hormones,
right. That's why
right?
it's been associated with improvement in having less risk of cancer, as an example.
And the
And
antioxidants and all the colorful foods, like that's
that's
key,
right.
right?
Now, next on the list, and so important, is the kind of fats that we should be eating and should not be eating. And there is a tremendous amount of confusion about this, for sure.
Right.
Well, first of all, so I'm not talking about how many macros right here, right now, that people should be eating. And generally, what I recommend after you have met, the amount of protein I like people to eat, and getting like one to a couple cups of vegetables at a meal, depending if they're raw or cooked, is just adding enough fat for your food to taste delicious. I feel like that's kind of an easy way to think about this. But we understand now, of course, there are three kinds of fat and they're not all equal. So, what our body is made up of, and by the way, when you eat too many carbohydrates, your body makes saturated fat. And we also, our body can make monounsaturated fat too. And these are the fats we're eating mostly. So, olives, avocados, olive oil, and yes, butter. Yes, to bacon. Okay. We don't need to be afraid anymore. Fat that is dietary fat does not become this. And actually, I would say the opposite happens because it's because when we think about visceral fat, the number one issue with causing visceral fat is insulin. Insulin is the energy storage hormone. So you cannot store fat in your belly when insulin was low. And guess what fat of the three macronutrients, it has the least ability to break down to carbohydrate to glucose rather and provoke a response from insulin. So it really we want to think of it as belly fat friend, not foe. Although but I would just put a little dot there. We want the butter on the broccoli, not on the bread. Then it becomes a whole nother discussion, which is not good. Just to be crystal clear on the fat thing, okay? But before
Yeah.
we leave that, I always need to talk about the polyunsaturated fats, omega 3 and omega 6.
Yes, and vegetable oils, please.